Hey, Ole Miss fans, welcome back to another video. And today we're joined in by Mr. Josh Pitts. And today we're going to talk about the NFL Draft coming up. You know, Josh, NFL Draft is here in about a week. We are recording this episode on a Thursday, and actually the NFL Draft is next Thursday. But this year, Ole Miss is going to have several players get drafted. A couple guys will probably go undrafted too, but it's looking like Ole Miss is going to have at least 10 plus guys this year that will be either drafted or undrafted. So this is going to be pretty exciting next weekend for us Ole Miss fans, just to see like who goes where. Possibility, you know, two of these guys may go to the same team. I mean, who knows? It's a draft. Anything can happen. But yeah, Josh, definitely appreciate you joining this episode. It definitely means a lot for sure.
Definitely. I appreciate being on. And it's like you said, this is a pretty loaded draft for Ole Miss players. Some, yes, will go undrafted. That's not the end of the world. But to compare this draft class to previous draft class, about the closest you're going to get to this particular draft class is the draft class that had Tunsil, that had Kimdichie, that had Treadwell. You know, a lot of front-end talent, but this one, what makes the difference is there's some heavy front-end talent from the Rebels, but there's also some that's going to be sprinkled out across day 2 and day 3.
Yeah, that was kind of the difference with that one. I'm kind of glad you brought it up because, yeah, going back to that one, yes, Ole Miss had a couple guys who went first round. But if you was to compare that draft and this draft, this year you'll have more guys who will go on day 2 and day 3 compared to that draft years ago.
That's right. You know, the previous draft that we were talking about, you pretty much only had Tunsil, Kimdichie, and Treadwell. There was probably some later, but I'd have to go back and look into that a bit. But, you know, with this draft class, you're looking at potentially guaranteed 2 day 1 draft picks, possibly 3. And then when you come into day 2, which is going to be rounds 2 and 3, you know, there could be an additional 3-4 more players taken, plus players taken on day 3 through rounds 5 through 7.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and talk about some of these guys who will end up being day 1 selections first. So, of course, the first guy I think most Ole Miss fans are kind of curious about is going to, of course, be Jaxson Dart. Of course, I mean, if you look at the mock drafts right now, you know, Jaxson Dart is projected as high as, I think, about 9 to the Saints. Possibility he could go to the Steelers at 21. I know the Rams at 26, possibility too. And, you know, some of these other teams could still be a possibility for Dart too. But at this time, if you're just kind of looking at most of the mock drafts, those 3 selections are kind of the top 3 most popular choices for Dart at this time. But, you know, Jaxson Dart, he has met with several teams, just kind of a couple teams. For example, he has met with the Saints. He's met with the Browns, the Raiders, the Rams, the Giants, the Steelers. I think you mentioned a couple of days ago, I think you said he met with the Seahawks too. I think I even saw somewhere he met with the Falcons. So, look, I mean, Dart has, you know, worked out and has met with several teams. But just kind of your opinion, just kind of your take, what team do you think Dart's going to go to in the draft?
So for Dart, the question is, when on day 1 will he go? It's not if he's going to go on day 1.
Yeah.
The consensus, and it's going to tug on many Ole Miss fans' heartstrings, but I don't want it to happen, is the New Orleans Saints. The Saints need a lot more than a quarterback. If he goes to New Orleans, he has no offensive line. He has a single horse backfield with Kamara. Kamara is a great player, but age catches us all. Wide receivers, he's really only he has Chris Olave, who, yeah, he's good, but because of injuries, it kind of limits him. But outside of that, there's no offensive firepower. And in free agency, the Saints basically got no one.
Yeah.
Then you come to the Steelers, which is really interesting because they are still in the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes, which personally I want Aaron Rodgers to go to the Vikings just to complete the Favre cycle.
Yeah, I mean.
But listening to some other podcasts today, I was listening to Todd McShay's podcast, also listen to Mel Kiper and Phil Yates' podcast. They're saying that the Steelers are going to pass on Jaxson Dart. Is that true? We won't know until next Thursday. Personally, I think that's a good spot for him to land. Even if it's 21st overall, he's going to a place with a good offensive line, a steady coaching staff, and weapons in the skill positions. You've got DK, who is now a Steeler. You've got George Pickens. You can think what you want to of him, but he is still an elite wide receiver. And then you have tight ends with Pat Freiermuth and who they drafted out of Georgia. I can't remember his name, but big body tight end that will ease up some of those red zone concerns that Dart may have.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Saints earlier, and look, I mean, I get it. I mean, of course, here in Mississippi, most Ole Miss fans, well, a bunch of Ole Miss fans down in New Orleans, bunch of Ole Miss fans, down in Jackson and Biloxi in that area too. So, I mean, this whole entire state is filled with many Saints fans. Of course, that'd be pretty cool, to see him go to the Saints. But if you're talking about the better fit or the better team, then yeah, the Steelers would be that better team. It'd be kind of cool to see that Ole Miss connection with Dart and DK, and you mentioned better tight ends, better offensive line, better defense. It's the Steelers, but that's kind of what it's looking like right now as far as the top possibilities is probably going to be the Saints or Steelers.
Now,
Rams, a very interesting one too. I know the Rams have a couple other quarterbacks too, so kind of curious to see if they draft a quarterback round one. I know the Rams, they got Stafford, Jimmy G, they got Stetson Bennett too. So
now that's
if they
that's one. If the Steelers whiff on Dart, and that's their prerogative to do so, but if the Steelers whiff on them, I would love for the Rams to draft him. The Rams, you've got Matthew Stafford, who could be your Obi-Wan Kenobi to Anakin Skywalker. He gets at least a year, possibly 2 years, to learn in Sean McVay's offense, which is very quarterback friendly. He's got good weapons there in Puka Nacua, and also they signed Devontae Adams, a great running back, and Kyron Williams, good offensive line. But I think it's when it comes to the Rams, it's going to be who's available once they get to, I believe it's the 26th pick.
Yeah, 26.
So the Rams really need secondary help. So if there's just a corner or a safety in that area that they cannot pass on and they don't think they can get them in round 2, then he may not go there. But that's the pick I would absolutely love. And I know most people hate that because, he won't get to play for a year or two. That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, us, I'm looking at this from the fan perspective here. I mean, us as fans, we want to see him play right away. Right. We want to see him be a Hall of Famer and have a great career. But sometimes players just have to sit on the bench and learn.
That's right.
That's just how it is sometimes.
And you I mean, look in the past. I mean, yes, the Browns are also a candidate for Jaxson Dart. I've seen some draft projections where the Browns, I believe they're second overall, and they're going to take Travis Hunter there. But where they trade back into the first round with the Vikings or the Chiefs and take Jaxson Dart in that later pick. But back to my original topic is that Baker Mayfield went to the Browns. He was expected to be everything all at once, and he just didn't have that maybe mental maturity at that time. Also, the Browns are the Browns, and as you can see, he's an elite quarterback. He's down in Tampa now, and I mean, lighting it up.
Yeah. Okay, I'll tell you what, let's kind of move on right quick. So we mentioned Dart. The next guy looks like he'll be a first-round selection is also going to be Walter Nolen, of course, defensive tackle from Ole Miss this past year. I know a couple teams he's met with, and of course, this may not be the full list here, but these are just a couple teams I know he's met with for sure. I know he's met with the Cardinals, the 49ers, Bengals, Cowboys, Panthers, and Eagles. I know he's met with those six for sure. And yeah, you mentioned, of course, you mentioned just a second ago, possibility a team could trade back, just like Dart. One of these teams, like the Browns or somebody else who has won the first few picks, they could trade back, or could trade a second and third for a first round pick or something to get Dart, late first round. So that's always a possibility too. But even some of these teams here, I mean, you look at the Cardinals, they got pick 16, 49ers 11, Bengals 17, Cowboys 12, Panthers at 8, Eagles at 32. Outside of the Eagles, there's one of these other teams that could take Nolan maybe at pick 16. Possibility you may see one of these teams, fall back 5 or 10 picks. Just kind of what's your thoughts on teams interested in Nolan and where he may go?
Well, from that list, I'm going to go ahead and mark out the Panthers. Nolan is an elite defensive lineman. He can play all across the defensive line, whether that's a 3 or 4 technique. But with the 8th overall pick, I don't see him going there. Most mock drafts and the talking heads have him going anywhere from mid-first round to early second round. Personally, out of that list, the team that I like the most is the Bengals. They are desperate for defensive players. They're going to have to go in the draft because they've tied all their money into Burrow, Chase, and Higgins. So they're going to have to take a Nolan, take a Mason Graham, whomever's available, because in free agency, they are not going to get that kind of player.
Yeah, that was actually the same point I was going to bring up, because if you guys have paid attention, the Bengals have already spent a bunch of money, and defensive line is what they really need some help in for sure. So that's kind of the expectation. Most people were kind of thinking is a guy, they're probably going to pick somebody on the defensive line. So possibility, of course, it's not official, but possibility no one may just go to the Bengals. Moving on, of course, the next pick for Ole Miss could be kind of a couple guys, and there's kind of a couple guys right there projected early second. Of course, you can mention Amos, you can mention Princely, Trey Harris looking like he'll be a third-round pick, Paul Jr. looking like he'll be a third-round pick as well too. But I tell you what, let's talk about Amos first. So yeah, Amos is projected maybe one of the last few picks in the first round, but he's looking like more like a mid-second round. It's looking like he'll be picked somewhere around pick 50 or so, 50, 55 is what I'm kind of saying like projections. But yeah, Amos has been with the Eagles, the Bills, the Cardinals, Buccaneers, Steelers, Packers, Broncos, others as well too. Do you have any thoughts, any ideas where Amos may go, if it is round 1, if it is round 2? Just kind of what's your thoughts on that?
Right. So Trey Amos is your number 3 on possibilities for a 3-player first round. We could be talking 4 if it wasn't for some injuries and other concerns, but we'll get to those when we get to those. Trey Amos, out of the teams that he's met with, the one that makes the absolute most sense is the Buffalo Bills. They'd be late in the first round. They really have no secondary ever since they traded Ladarius White a few years ago. And before that, he was dealing with injuries. That right now is what's holding the Bills back as a secondary. They've got the elite quarterback. They've got offensive line play, running back play, defensive line play, but they need to work on that back end of the defense, and that would be a perfect landing spot for Trey Amos as the Bills.
I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but there's actually another Ole Miss defensive player who has visited the Bills, I think twice or maybe 3 times already. So it is kind of interesting. I don't think most Ole Miss fans knew it, but the Bills, I have talked to and interviewed several Ole Miss players the last few weeks. And, of course, we'll talk about that more in a minute. Next guy, I'll tell you what, we'll talk about Princely next. So, yeah, Princely, a guy looking like mid-second round pick is kind of the projections on him. I mean, he's been with the Ravens, the Panthers, Cardinals, Seahawks, Eagles, Falcons, Buccaneers, and more. Do you have any thoughts, any ideas as far as where Princely may go?
Princely's one of those guys that could be a lot higher on this draft board. One thing with this draft, it is a heavy line draft. So offensive line, defensive line, there is a lot of players in this draft. And so that's where you're going to see, maybe some of these top wide receivers like Umanmielen from Arizona is going to fall back because there's just so many good players ready on the offensive defensive line, and that's where games are won. With Princely, there's concerns about character from the talking heads I've heard from. There's concern that he is limited because of speed. So that's something, that'll push him back in the draft. Out of the teams listed, I'd have to say the Ravens definitely need edge pass rushers. So that would be a good landing spot for him. Also, the Cardinals, I think, need a lot of defensive help to keep Kyler Murray off the field so he can play Call of Duty or whatever he does.
Yeah, the Cardinals is one of those teams looking at several defensive linemen for sure. So if they do pick a guy first round, I wouldn't be surprised. If it ends up being their second round selection, I wouldn't be surprised either. But there is a possibility. You could see the Cardinals take Princely. They could possibly take Nolan. Part of me would almost not be surprised if they do take one of those two guys in the draft.
That's right. And for Princely, if the Cardinals take him, if the Ravens take him, I'm going to lean more third round, possibly even into the fourth round.
Yeah, it's a possibility. I mean, you just never know. But I mean, most of the projections have him mid-second, some third round. But I mean, it's a draft. Anything could happen. He could fall back. You just never know. Next guy we'll talk about here is the Ole Miss wide receiver Trey Harris. And actually several months ago, he was actually projected first round. But of course, Ole Miss fans know he has dealt with some injuries the last couple years, and really, I think that's what's kind of really hurting his stock. Is just because he has dealt with some injuries and has missed some games the last couple years. But Harris looking like he'll be a third round selection is what it's kind of looking like at this moment. I think I've seen anywhere from pick 60 to pick 80 or 85, kind of in that area or ballpark somewhere. But yeah, I mean, Harris has met with the Steelers, the Chargers, Rams, Cardinals, Saints, 49ers, Patriots, and more. Got any thoughts of where Harris may go?
I agree. Trey Harris would have been a first-round pick if it wasn't for the issues with the groin throughout the season. I think he was kind of limited in combine and pro day still because of it, still recovering. But one thing that I wish the scouts, the coaches, the GMs would take into consideration, look at his stats. Even though he missed, nearly half the season, he was still a top 5 wide receiver, not in the SEC, in the nation.
Yeah.
And there's also some concern because he's really only played wide receiver for about 3 years. Really 2 years. He did the 2 years here with us at Ole Miss. And prior to that, it was Louisiana Tech. Remember, he was a quarterback coming out of high school. He was Malik Neighbors' quarterback in high school.
Yeah, that's something many don't know about.
Yeah. So there is some concern. I would assume that maybe he has a limited route tree. He's just the big play guy. But I think in what limited film session that you can have with him, he runs, in routes. He runs flies. He runs wheel routes. No issue. He is just an athlete. And out of the teams that, he's spoken with, the one that stands out to me, well, two teams that stand out really well to me. One is the Chargers. They have Ladd McConkey, which is their top wide receiver, but Ladd McConkey is a slot. Trey Harris in the NFL, he is a big body dude. He is going to be a outside receiver. So I think he would go there, do very well supporting Justin Herbert and that group. The other team is one that we've already talked about, and them having limited skill position, and that being the Saints. Again, outside receiver, Chris Olave is more of your slot, your across the middle guy. So that would definitely relieve some of that pressure off of him and give you a big target for whoever your quarterback's going to be, whether that be Jaxson Dart, Shadir Sanders, or Derek Carr.
Yeah. Next guy we'll talk about is Chris Paul Jr., the Ole Miss linebacker. It's kind of looking like he'll be a third-round pick. But Paul Jr. has met with several teams: Bills, Saints, 49ers, Cowboys, Jets, Titans, Rams, Raiders, Falcons, and Chiefs. That is 10 teams that he has either met with or will be meeting with here pretty soon. Just kind of a couple teams I just keep on hearing over and over and over again for Paul Jr. is the Bills. I think he's met with the Bills twice or maybe 3 times already. I know the 49ers, I think, is one of them he's met with more than once as well, too. And there's still a possibility some of these other ones he's met with more than once as well, too. But you think Paul Jr. to the Bills, the 49ers, maybe one of these other teams? Just kind of thoughts on that.
So just to preface a little bit, Chris Paul, one of those guys that I really wish would have came back for one more season.
Oh, yeah.
I get it. I mean, you've got to do what you got to do. And I don't know his personal situation. Maybe this is a business decision that he needs to make, and that's fine. It's none of my business. Regardless, he's in the draft. You mentioned on the Bills, like I said, the back end of that defense, they need a lot of help if they're going to compete with the Ravens and the Chiefs of the AFC. So the Bills are a great landing spot for him. The spot that I really, really, really like is the 49ers. He would be lining up right next to who I think is the best linebacker in the NFL with Fred Warner. Actually, earlier today on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, he posted a picture where he had met with the 49ers and took a picture with Fred Warner. So could that be a little carrot on the string there for fans to follow? Possibly. Or it could just be appreciation. But I really like the 49ers more than all the other spots.
Okay. I'll tell you what, there's still going to be a few more guys we'll mention in this video. I don't really have much information on these other guys, just to be honest with you. Of course, you still got Watkins, you got Ivy, Pegues, Prescorn, Bentley, Wells. Watkins is looking like a day 3 selection. Possibility could be undrafted, but looking like maybe 6th round, 7th round for him. I think Ivy projected around 5th or 6th round, I believe. Pegues looking like a day 3 selection. And then it's kind of looking like Prescorn could be late 7th round if he is undrafted. I would not be surprised. And of course, Bentley and Wells kind of looking like they'll be undrafted too. I know Watkins has met with the Steelers. That is the only team I've seen for him. I know Ivy has met with a couple too. For Ivy, I think it was the Colts, 49ers, Ravens, and Packers, I believe, on him. I know Pegues has met with the Raiders and Steelers. Prescorn has met with the Falcons, Packers, Steelers, and Cowboys. And then as far as Bentley and Wells, honestly, I have no idea. Do you kind of any thoughts, opinions on these guys here? Do you think some of them will end up being drafted, or I think we're both kind of assuming some of these guys will end up being undrafted, but any kind of just thoughts, opinions on this?
So with Watkins, I think he had a really good NFL combine, and it really helped him out.
Mm-hmm.
I think he often got lost in the shuffle of, well, there's Trey Harris, and then there's receivers. So with Watkins, if he were to get drafted by the Steelers, I love that because DK and Pickens are obviously big body outside receivers. Watkins taking over the middle of the field and the slot is perfect for him. Who's going to throw the ball to him? They'll have to figure that out. But I do think Watkins gets drafted anywhere from 5th to 6th round. I think the talent is too much to ignore. As for Ivy, he and Pegues both kind of get lost in the shuffle because of Walter Nolen and because he's getting all the eyes on him.
Yeah.
with Ivy, said he spoke with the Colts, the 49ers, the Ravens, the Packers. Again, the Ravens need edge rushers, so that will be a great landing spot for him. One thing that it's kind of bittersweet is that if one of these guys pan out, whether it's Umanmielen, whether it's Ivy, it's probably going to knock our favorite Canadian Robinson that played for us out of that position. So
yeah, I think he's kind of right there on the edge, I think, of barely being on the team, just to be honest with you.
Right, and he got some good playing time, but I don't know how much of that contributed to poor evaluations of other talent or injuries. I don't really keep up with the Ravens a whole lot. But the Colts, another good landing spot for him. That would give DeForest Buckner some help along that defensive line. The Colts are needs to be burnt down and built back up from the ground. So that would be a good spot for him to really, make an impact, make an impression, and get playing time. For Pegues, I'm curious if us playing him at Wildcat running back hurt him in the draft more than anything, because he got more eyes on him because here's this 300-pound dancing bear, scoring touchdowns on the offense. So they focus more on that than what he did on defense. If you pay attention to him on defense, with him and Nolan in the middle, they were getting sound push and closing in the pockets. So I think Pegues gets drafted. Whoever drafts him is going to get a steal of a player and an athlete. Prescorn, he spoke with the Falcons, Packers, Steelers, Cowboys. The Cowboys, I think, would be a great landing spot for him, because I think Caden Prescorn is a carbon copy of Cowboys tight end. His name is right there on the tip of my tongue. Jason Witten.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He can catch the ball. He can provide you a red zone presence, but he can also get in line and block without an issue. Very strong guy, very big guy. So does Prescorn get drafted? I don't feel comfortable saying he gets drafted. If he does, look towards the last 2 rounds and maybe the Cowboys take him. For Wells and Bentley suffered the most from our most recent season.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, he had pictures of somebody. He was dating somebody's daughter. He, called in a bomb threat or something. And we had a wide receiver playing running back. So for whatever reason, he didn't get to play. I think that really hurt him. But the few times you did get to see him play against Georgia, against LSU, he provided an immediate spark to the offense and was able to, pick up 20, 30 yards, chunk plays like it was nothing. So I think he does go undrafted. I think he does get an opportunity, perhaps with the Steelers, who right now their only running back is Jalen Washington. As Najee Harris was traded to the Chargers. And then Juice Wells, the greatness we never saw.
Yeah.
Could it have been a scheme issue? Quite possibly. I've seen, I think, one mock draft, and he was going 4th or 5th round to the Seahawks. And if he goes there, that would be a good landing spot for him. The Seahawks traded DK. They released Tyler Lockett. So they've got Jackson Smith and Jiba as their primary wide receiver, but all wide receivers need support.
Yeah, gotcha. But hey, I think it's going to kind of wrap it up. Josh, definitely appreciate you coming on and talking some Ole Miss football and talking about the drafts next week. Other Ole Miss fans watch this video, whether you all thoughts and opinions on this as well too. But that's pretty much all I got for the video. So if you can, just leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Would be greatly appreciated. See you guys this video. Have a good one, and of course, hotty toddy.